New York City, Albany, Rochester, Buffalo, you'll find a fusion of jazz and hip-hop. The rhythms in from the bright lights of NYC to the falls of Niagara. Every corner, every town, we're all connected, brother.
Everyone, I want to thank you all for being here, both online and in the room. We are here to have a really interesting, intriguing, and real New York conversation. This is the New York Space Business Roundtable. My name is Tamara Bond-Williams, and I will be emceeing this program for the most part. Just a little bit of housekeeping. The folks online, you are on mute. You will not be able to unmute yourself, but I will be monitoring the chat. And so if there are questions, concerns, ideas, anything that you'd like to share, please do put things in the chat so that I can respond to those as we go along. And let's see. Well, I want to welcome first to the middle of the floor. That's what I'd like to do. Liz Evans. Liz, I'm going to go ahead and give you a mic so that she can greet us on behalf of Clyde and Company.
Yeah, so at Clyde & Co, we're really happy to welcome everybody here. We have a global space practice that includes all areas of transactional work, litigation defense work, and liability coverage and liability procurement work in the whole space industry. So we're delighted to host our first space event in New York at Clyde & Co. And welcome, and don't hesitate to reach out to us if you should need anything after the panels.
Thank you so much, Liz. And again, my name is Tamara Bond-Williams. On behalf of the New York Space Business Roundtable, I am the Deputy Executive Director of SSPI, which is Space and Satellite Professionals International. We are a global organization of individuals in the industry who do whatever it is that makes our industry go. So if you're building, launching, monitoring, doing telemetry for, gathering data from satellites in any way, shape, or form, you are welcome to be a part of SSPI. Okay, I want to do a little bit of just thank yous. We have a number of folks who have made it possible for SSPI to put this event on. We want to thank, first of all, Clyde & Company, who is our fourth quarter sponsor and also today's host that you just heard from Liz. I want to thank as well Mynaric, who is also our fourth quarter sponsor. So last month's episode of the Roundtable today and next month's episode of the Roundtable are supported by that. And our annual sponsors are Druva, Luxembourg Trade and Invest, and Satsure. These are companies we hope you get to know. I want to call out Luxembourg Trade and Invest. They are here in New York City as well, and they are eager to do business with our industry. So if you see them around, please go talk to them. As well, we have our supporting organizations, Empire Space, GSOA, the New York Space Technology and Innovation and Development Group, New York Space Alliance, who are our partners in putting on the New York Space Business Roundtable, and you'll hear from Mr. Joe Fargnoli in just a moment. Space Business Qualified, the World Teleport Association, and our media partner, Space News, who typically does our significant digits, but today we're going to do a little something different. Next month, you'll hear more about this. We will be in London honoring 3 honorees who have told their best story this year, and we hope that we see you there. With that, I would love to bring on to the stage Mr. Joseph Fargnoli.
Thank you, Tamara, and welcome everybody today to this great New York Space Business Roundtable. Glad to see everybody here. We put this on monthly, and every month we try to think of a topic that's really relevant and important to our space industry. We want to create an area where we can come together and really talk about interesting and challenging topics. I think we've had a cataclysmic change in geopolitical reality, and that's going to reflect in space. We're not here for a political conversation. We're here to look at the facts before us as a commercial space industry. The reality that a lot of us have observed was the Trump 45 administration was very energetic in promoting commercial space. Barriers came down, money came in, but it was also obvious that we needed more guardrails to ensure that that enthusiasm transitioned into actual, prosperous results. So we've got a really sobering group of friends here today, a couple of visionaries and a number of practitioners. So I'm going to invite Mr. Hamlet Youssef to join us here, and Mr. John Wilding. Hamlet has extensive experience in national security and diplomacy, with active security clearances enabling him to review classified technologies for Iron Gate investments. He's worked with federal agencies on cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and mission-driven, mission-critical needs. Prior to government service, he conducted business development and geopolitical risk analysis across the US, Europe, and the Middle East. Hamlet holds an MBA from Pepperdine University and a BS in international business from Florida State University. Hamlet is managing partner, Iron Gate Capital Advisors. Thank you for joining us today, Hamlet, all the way from sunny Florida. Mr. John Wilding from sunny Texas, Dallas, Texas, is a partner in Stinson LLP. John Wilding brings over 20 years of corporate and securities expertise, advising boards on governance and fiduciary duties. He is a U.S. Army veteran. Thank you for your service. John served 12 years, earning the National Defense Service Medal. He clerked for 2 federal judges and participated in Leadership Dallas. He has served on the Southwest Regional Selection Committee for the White House Fellow Programs. John resides in Dallas with his family and enjoys contributing to his community through Highland Park United Methodist Church. Again, thank you for your service. The reason why we have these 2 fine gentlemen here today is because Hamlet, in my opinion, with Iron Gate Capital Advisors, really spends a lot of time understanding geopolitical reality and the place where capital comes in to help serve the national needs. When we think about what promotes U.S. security, we think about defense and economic security. So we're going to start with Hamlet giving us an overview of why commercial space is important for U.S. economic and defense strength.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us here. Looking forward to having a pretty good conversation here in terms of why this matters, why are we here, and I'm going to look back for the camera in the audience here. So, listen, the importance here is, I don't think since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution have we been at a precipice of such demonstrable technological, economic, geopolitical, societal disruptions. Between 1890 and 1950, we went from the horse and buggy to the vehicle to space. We went from oil power land to the nuclear age. Massive amounts of technological impact and change happened during that period. During that 60-year period, we saw 2 world wars, potentially 3, an economic crisis, Great Depression, pandemic, and a complete reconfiguring of the geopolitical landscape. You had the rise and fall of the czars of the Russian Empire, and you had the transition of the British rule to America becoming a superpower, the balkanization of the Middle East, massive disruption in Europe. All that was driven by technology. We're about to go through that same kind of change here from a technological standpoint, where economic security, national security, and how we live our lives, it's going to be demonstrably different because of disruptions in technology. And those technology disruptions aren't just terrestrial. I think what you're seeing is space, and commercial space is going to play a key part in that. That change, that disruption, that innovation isn't going to necessarily come from academia or governments. It's going to come from the private sector. It's going to come from entrepreneurs. It's going to come from startups as well. So that is going to change significantly. The importance of commercial space, and kind of going back into my industrial age metaphor, is over the last 300 years, the countries, the nation states that we're able to dominate the high seas. We're able to basically dictate geopolitics for centuries to come. That's the US, it's Western Europe primarily. As a result, they kind of control the direction of where economies in the world has gone. I would argue that same kind of concept is now going to apply to the next 300 years potentially. The nations and the technologies that dominate commercial space, the high ground in space, and LEO, GEO, and cislunar, are going to dictate geopolitics, are going to dictate economic security. It's the reason why there is an arms race, a technology-driven arms race brewing between the CCP, Russia, and the free Western world. It's realizing the importance of that. NASA has, to sound crass, has abdicated LEO, GEO, and they're not playing in that space anymore. They're focusing on deep space exploration, thanks to the collapsing costs of launch, primarily driven through the success of Elon Musk and SpaceX. Business models that didn't make sense 10, 15 years ago now do. So you're seeing a massive rush of opportunities to deploy capital and invest in this space. So we're very excited in terms of where this goes, because this is not only about driving innovation and change, but it's also talk about just reshaping our economy. Because as startups grow, they grow. They turn from startups to operating companies. Those are real high-paying, tax-generating jobs. So that every facet of our life is going to change in the coming years. I think we're beginning a significant movement in that space.
Thank you, Hamlet. Told you he was a great guy. Let's turn over to John now. I gave you John's official bio, but in addition to being a general great guy as well, John is very closely aligned to the Trump administration. And I would say that I think he understands the ethos of why the administration thinks that commercial space is important. And I'd like to ask John to give us a few comments on, what do we expect to see substantively from Trump 47? And in principle, what is the approach to looking at commercial space from your perspective?
Thank you. And it's wonderful to be with you here in New York. And it's great to see my friend Hamlet, who I've known for quite a long time. I'm a deal lawyer. So what am I doing here? I form investment funds. I help people buy and sell companies. But I was also in the Army. I also went to Harvard and got a master's degree in public policy. So I've been interested. And through, a series of events in 2016, I got very close with Trump family, the Trump administration. And I helped a number of clients sort of navigate DC across all sorts of things. So right now, and unless you're under a rock, you're seeing the excitement of space, right? And I'm from Texas. I am political. I fought like hell for Donald Trump to get elected, and that happened. So now we all just need to work together. We have unified government, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity, particularly in the space area, commercialization, public-private partnerships, satellites, for people to work together. I think with, any administration, any asset class, you have to get the right team, right? If you're thinking about going, you're an entrepreneur, you have a business, you're an investor. If you think you're just going to break into the space program, think again, right? You need to have the right team. To be thoughtful about that. You need to have more than one group on the team. You need to figure out who the players are. And in this administration, I worked a lot with the Trump family. And what I would say is that loyalty does matter. And it should matter to you, and it should matter to anybody, because these are people that you can trust. So I'm so excited about Elon's activity, and sort of building on what Trump did. So what did Trump do? He had sort of 6 policy directives. He created Space Force. He created a separate branch of the military to handle space commercialization, all these kind of things no one had ever been able to do before. So Donald Trump is absolutely enthusiastic and ready to rock and roll when it comes to space. It's the final frontier, as they say. And so we could talk more. I don't want to go on and on right now, but I think if you're in this business at this time, you should be very excited. You should get the right partners, and you should be open-minded. And I think you should swing for the fences, because what we do have here that we also haven't had in over 200 years, essentially, we have a unified Republican government. We have a president who's never going to have to run again. And we have a president that was largely elected by the working man in this country. And so we have these forces that are coming together in such a positive way. And I see it here in New York, and it's nice to be back.
Thank you, John. A couple of questions. Hamlet, what do you hope to see from this new administration to allow capital to come to bear and really help commercial grow? What kind of barriers do you want to see brought down?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a free market libertarian, so I think the best thing that DC can do is really set the stage by understanding what the ground rules are going to be, and wherever possible, start breaking down the decades-long hurdles and bureaucracies that have been in place that have allowed only a handful of players, primes, to play a part. I don't want to besmirch Lockheed and Raytheon and Boeing and some of the other major players. They're all going to play a key part in making this happen. But there is so much innovation happening outside of DC. There's so much innovation happening outside of the traditional primes. We need to understand how to properly reform acquisition priorities and authorities to allow the private sector to participate in earnest in this space. Shameless plug, as a fund manager and allocator in this space, I completely agree with what John said. Partnerships and relationships are key, and understanding how to navigate that landscape is going to be critical. I would like for everything to be in open architecture starting tomorrow. It's not going to happen. It's going to take us years, I think, to start whittling down and drain the swamp, but break through the traditional bureaucracies and kind of just the natural hindrance of big government that have been there over the years. So you're going to need to have partners that understand that landscape and can navigate those opportunities and identify clear access points and opportunities where information is key. So from a DC standpoint, I think anything that they can do to start signaling that, okay, we're not going to get to where we need to be overnight, but the ship is moving in that direction. We want to start, not as in get rid of regulation, but make it easier to understand where and how to deploy and invest in with government. So that I think is a great start.
Thank you, Hamlet. And John, I have a question for you about the ethos of new space. Isn't it all about billionaires leaving the planet, leaving everyone else behind? Is that the ethos of new space?
No, not at all. People might think that, but I can assure you that Elon Musk is well known, might not even want to be more well known, and that this is a passion project for him. NASA was sort of dwindling at the vine. I don't think there's been this much excitement in space and satellite in this country since the 1960s. A guy like Elon Musk really inspires, just an entire generation of young people to focus on space, to dream big, to focus on studying the hard sciences. I mean, this is a guy that had a dual degree in economics and physics. Where does that combination ever occur, right? And so I think that, what you're going to see is, in a way that, I'm watching Don Jr. yesterday. They're down in Texas, launching this. Don's saying it's the coolest thing he's ever seen. And all Don does is cool things. So, it's a high level of excitement. I would say a couple of things, and we may touch on this later, but, national security is a huge part of this, and Donald Trump understands this. My friend and fellow Texan, John Ratcliffe, who's going to run the CIA, also understands this. And so, the militarization of the satellite program, China, just sort of the way technology and GPS is so central to everything, you're going to see a lot of investment in technologies that make that sort of grid, if you will, more secure, less likely to be spoofed, these kind of things. So I think it's full speed ahead. I'm very excited.
John, Hamlet, thank you. What a great vision for the next 4 years and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our next panel now to come up. we could. If you guys wouldn't mind, we're going to swap over. All right, so I want to start with Mr. Michael Sheets. Michael is a CNBC award-winning space reporter. He joined the world's leader in business news nearly a decade ago and has been covering the space industry since 2017. He contributes across both CNBC and NBC Universal's global content offering, from digital reporting, television programming, and is the author of the weekly newsletter CNBC's Investing in Space. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Let's see. Liz Evans. Lynn specializes. I don't know if this thing went cold on me here. Lynn specializes in structured-based asset finance with a focus on aviation, satellite, and transportation finance. She has extensive experience in secured lending, leasing, and space law, representing financial institutions, private equity firms, and governmental agencies. Liz has contributed to aviation restructurings and drafted legislation related to space law. She holds significant expertise in SBA lending and economic development. Liz was honored with the Lawyers Alliance Cornerstone Award for her contributions to economic development zones. Thank you, Liz, for joining us. Mr. Alex Hamilton. Alex leads Donald Capital. Thanks, Mike. Alex leads Donald Capital LLC with over 25 years of Wall Street experience, formerly at Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse. He played a key role in raising over 11 billion, that's with a B, billion, through aerospace defense IPOs and debt offerings. Alex has also served as CFO and board member and a top-ranked equity researcher. His insights have been featured on CNBC, Bloomberg, and Fox Business. Thank you, Alex, for joining us. Mr. Christopher Kunstadler, he's founder and president of Trident Space LLC. Chris is a global leader in space risk and policy, formerly global head of space at AXA XL. Chris has collaborated with satellite operators, manufacturers, and policymakers who advance space safety and situational awareness. He holds degrees in literature and engineering from UC and is a commercial pilot and musician. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. I'd like to call this our adult panel, where our initial panel, as great as they are our visionaries. We're talking about policy, chaotic visions. These are the guys who are going to help us keep the train on the rails, right? Keep the development of commercial space safe and moving forward. But I want to start with Michael as our transition. Michael, you have an awesome vision of space. I love what you've done. Great reporting. Thank you so much. What is your perspective as we transition out from big picture to pragmatic? What do you see as kind of the opportunities in the next 4 years and the risks?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for being here. Thank you for hosting us here. This is a fabulous event. And it's great to see more space happening here in New York, because most of it happens around the rest of the country. But everyone seems to come here for money every once in a while. So that's all been my favorite part about being the business reporter here. When we look into the next, just even 2025, I think looking at it in a 4-year paradigm maybe misses a long-term shift that's underway. And I just want to just pinpoint into 2025 in particular, because we've been on this really interesting journey where there was this slow climb, a lot of private capital coming into the industry in the 2010s. Then all of a sudden there's this kind of crazy whirlwind of people trying to, get that cash bag, go public via SPACs. That didn't end well for a number of folks. Unfortunately, everyone kind of got painted with a really broad brush as a part of that. But now the bifurcation is starting to happen right now, where you're seeing names that are generating meaningful revenue. I mean, look at Rocket Lab. I was just covering their Q3 results. They're trading over $10 billion now, double what their IPO price was, and they're looking at pulling in near upwards of 300 million in annual revenue, right? This is meaningful revenue from a hardware space infrastructure company that's really pushing things forward. That's not SpaceX, which is the other thing that's interesting as well, because SpaceX is the 800-pound gorilla in the room who everyone knows. They provide so many services, not only for the industry, but also for government. But we need more than just one company doing this. And we need options, especially when we look at the government and their access, we need options. So when I look forward at what's happening, it's that broader diversification and that growth really building meaningful momentum, and not just whipsawing up and down like we did see over the last 3 or 4 years, but actually having sustained momentum. I think if there's anything this new administration has an opportunity to do is just to try to make sure the guardrails
both aren't too tight, that it doesn't stranglehold that innovation and that momentum, but also that it doesn't get cut too far loose, that you end up with maybe one or two major players that are just kind of running rampant. You want that diversification. You want a lot of customers. You want a lot of, momentum around the industry. And you want a lot of options to, drive competition forward. And competition is what makes this industry so great, and especially gives us a leading edge on the global scale with the fact that China is just going to keep. There is no turnover in administration. There is no shift in policies. They're just going to keep plugging away into the industry. If we're going to match that, especially on a national security standpoint, you have to have that sort of healthy competition in the industry here domestically. So, very long answer to your, pretty simple question, but I think the long-term focus here in the industry is just sustained momentum. If there's anything I would call out.
Perfect, thank you. I also want to introduce, before we move on, Tom Dinges. Tom is Vice President of Investor Relations with Mynaric. Tom joined Mynaric AG in 2022, overseeing public market investor relations, capital raising, and strategy. Previously, he served as Senior Equity Analyst at JP Morgan, led investor relations for a US-listed tech company, and worked as a supply chain industry analyst, a CFA charter holder. Tom earned his BS from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where he was a three-time academic all-conference athlete. He lives near Boulder, Colorado with his family. Thank you, Tom, for joining us. I'm sorry for the late introduction. All right, Liz, I want to turn it over to you next. Again, we're talking about how to keep the guardrails on the enthusiasm for new space. Talk to us from the perspective of Clyde, what you guys offer, what your perspective is, what we should look out for.
Yeah, so when I first got into the space business, I got into it through the restructuring door, almost like I got into aviation representing TWA. In this case, I was representing a lender who had lent against a U.S. company, space satellite operator called Protostar, and we were able to do the first ever auction of two satellites that were in space. We did really well for the lenders and for the equity investors. And I thought to myself, well, I really need to learn more about this industry. And it was 2007, so I went to my first ever satellite conference. And at that conference, they had sort of a pre-finance day. I went to the pre-finance meetings, maybe 200 people were there, and they had a guest speaker for the lunch. And that guest speaker was Elon Musk. And at that time, he had just gotten the Falcon into orbit, and I was sitting next to some ULA guys, and they were just making fun of him. They were telling me he's never going to do it. This is, ridiculous. And I didn't really know anything about the industry. I met some ILS guys at the time, which was doing launch services out of Baikonur. It was a joint venture with, had been McDonnell Douglas. And I was just there to learn. So at the end of the luncheon, I was one of the very few people who went up and shook Elon's hand, and he invited me to go for a tour of SpaceX, and I did. Went to Long Beach, and it was really interesting. And he told me a funny story at the time. He said, we're trying to get the Air Force in here, and every time I bring them in, they just want to see my car company. Like they're more interested in the car than the launch. And, fast forward many years later, they actually had to sue the Air Force to get SpaceX considered. I worked very hard. I do a lot of finance work with the Export-Import Bank in classifying a SpaceX launch as an export. And we actually did some of the first deals of SpaceX getting Exim Bank financing as an export, even though it's being launched out of Cape Canaveral to foreign satellite operators. So that's just a way of saying like how much this industry has changed since 2007. And it's really amazing. And you do see this new space and old space coming together, right? You still have primes that are doing very, very excellent work, like Lockheed Sikorsky, like L3, like Harris Capital, but you also see them really investing and entering into development agreements with new space. And so, I am excited to see what happens. We do know that I do a lot of work with public-private partnerships out of the state of Florida. That the Trump administration in the past has been very, very space friendly and very much focused on how does space provide American jobs, how does space jettison American investment. And I think, some of the guardrails that we're starting to see, and hopefully we'll see more of, is, when is space really off the ITAR list, and when are we really looking at commercial developments, and how do we both, sort of satisfy the need for commercial contracting within an industry that has largely been in defense, and how should the regulatory framework change? And those are the types of things that I expect that we'll be working on very closely. Again, it's a pleasure to have everybody here, and I look forward to getting to more of you during the luncheon social part of this.
Thank you, Liz. And again, thank you to Clyde for hosting this event. Alex, you're with Donald Capital, and that was an 11 billion with a B, I heard. When we first started the New York Space Alliance, our passion was to help space transition from Silicon Valley VC investment to New York institutional investment. I think we've come a long way. What is your perspective on the readiness of the markets for significant capital investment over the next 4 years and beyond?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for everybody's time. So I think it's quite interesting. I think everyone's right. This is going to be a shot in the arm. I think this is going to be version 2.0. This is kind of, I think we're exiting pets.com, and we are sort of entering the next phase. I think we had a period. Obviously, listen, Elon had an uphill battle. He went against the grain. He went against the old boys club, and he has proved that commercialization works. And he has changed the business model. Everybody got very excited about it. VCs rushed in. SPACs made it, no discipline with SPACs. Here's a ton of money, go do what you want. And, everybody's eating that. So, and I think everybody's getting very excited. I can feel it. We have an IPO going out in the first quarter. That's a satellite hardware manufacturer. There's lots of momentum. And I think the problem is, part of the problem has been, and I think we're collapsing that time, is this isn't control alt delete stuff. This is stuff that you got to get right. And this is stuff that takes decades to build and get proper. So that doesn't necessarily tie with a lot of the VC's expectations. And I think that's been the problem right now when we're going out and talking to VCs in space. The ones that are ideas, next to impossible to get funded. You have to have something that's becoming, a line item in the defense budget. And that's going to collapse 5 years. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. I think we have lots of good stuff going on. But I think everybody, you're not going to be shooting down missiles in 2 years. Okay. So I think it's been hard. I think VCs have learned a lot on that transition. And now the institutional capital is probably stepping in. More family office money, I think, because that's more patient money. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the area that's going to be a little bit more successful. So it's great. I think that there's been attention to the space. People have tried to figure out how to monetize it. Hasn't really worked in most cases. It's worked in a few cases. And I think there's going to be, I'm hoping that there's going to be a little bit more rationale and discipline in looking at the valuations and when you're a go-to-market sort of business and how the earnings are going to flow through. So I think we're at a good time, but I do think the challenge is that, once again, this is stuff that takes decades to build. I also think, proof in the pudding's in the eating. Look at JPL, they just went through layoffs. Look at United Launch Alliance, they're having issues. So I think where JPL is going to go is that they're going to push more towards research. They're going to get rid of the engineering and leave the engineering to the private markets, which have proven to be successful, obviously, via Elon and Jeff Bezos. So, my word of caution is I think it's great. We're at a great time. There's going to be a huge spotlight on it. And I'm hoping people have learned sort of from the SPAC scenario that there's better ways to do this and better ways to gain scale and more disciplined valuations.
Excellent. Thank you. Over to Tom. Tom, you're with Mynaric. Can you tell us a little bit about your company? You're kind of the only honest guy here in that you're actually building stuff and trying to sell stuff. So tell us what it's like from the pointy tip of the spear of new space.
Thank you for the nice segue, because I'm going to lead into it with I'm the hardware systems guy here. I come from a finance background. I build finance, but our company builds optical terminals. We build optical terminals that go in between satellites. Build optical links is what we do. And this has been, as we just said, this has been hard. I mean, this has been a decade plus, a lot of investment, a lot of engineering hours to productize this technology. Prior to us and a handful of our competitors being able to really productize this was a bit more of a lab coat. kind of technology, right? I mean, they've had optical links up in space for a long time, but it was build me one to a government spec so we can send a communication signal from this point to another point. It's very expensive, done on sort of a cost plus basis. And what we are now doing is essentially commercializing that technology. We now have, a number of those primes that are involved in government programs. You're starting to see it emerge on the commercial side. And what was alluded to earlier by one of the commentators, I think is very, very true in the sense of we're moving from where we were on space being really driven by a number of just government programs, big funding, all that, to now even the government is saying I need to move faster, and it's both from a national security standpoint, but also to take advantage of those technologies. If you're building a satellite, it's going to be up there for 15 plus years. There's only so much you can upgrade on that. But if you're going to replace those satellites now every few years, you're going to get a little bit like the iPhone box. You're going to get best technology and we're doing it and put out respect. So I do think there's a big change happening in the market, and thankfully, one of the companies that's actually helping to participate in that and help us really well.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Over to Chris. Chris, you've had multiple lives in the insurance industry. Insurance might seem boring, but it's an extremely important part of this industry. Talk to us about what are the new up-and-coming models and opportunities, and what role does insurance play in helping us to keep the train on the tracks here and keep the guardrails in place so that these chaotic visions come in safely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate being here. So I've been in the space risk business for 40 years. I managed several teams of space insurance underwriters doing the risk analysis, issuing the insurance contract, paying claims, taking premiums for several companies. And now I've set up my own consulting firm doing risk and insurance for space clients, civil, commercial, national security. Also doing industry analytics and space policy evaluation. So I like to say the space insurance is really a critical enabler of innovation and investment. Without insurance, investors would be very loath to take some of the very large risks that companies engage in when they're starting new space programs. So it's a business that's full of risk. And there are some emerging risks that we need to be watching out for. I don't like to just put out, issue lists of challenges without responsible opportunities. So consider this a list of challenges, but also opportunities for the insurance market and really for the entire space industry. So first of all, there's a very fragile space insurance market. In 2013. There was less than $600 million of premium into the space insurance market. The losses in 2023, I think I said 2023, were over 1.8 billion. So more than 3 times the amount of premium. So it was a very bad year for space insurance. It was the worst year ever in the market. This year is better in terms of profitability, but the premium is even less than it was in 2023. So it's a very difficult time for insurance companies that like nice, smooth earnings, right? Space insurance is very volatile. You can have a very bad year and a very good year and another bad year and so on. So it's insurance companies try to stay away from very volatile lines of insurance unless they have a big enough portfolio that they can handle that. Really, what we're seeing in our business is a slight decrease in supply of insurance, of capital in the insurance market because of the results in 2023, but an even stronger decrease in the demand for space insurance because satellites are smaller and cheaper, launches are less expensive, you have constellations that have built-in risk management just in terms of numbers. So that's really affecting the volume of business that insurance companies are able to access. At the same time, in the next several years, you're going to have things like commercial space stations with very, very high values, commercial space stations, commercial missions to the moon and beyond. These companies are going to want to buy insurance for very, very expensive projects. The capital isn't there today, so we need to figure out how to work that problem. There's the threat of conflict in space. Obviously, geopolitics is very fraught these days. And whether it's cyber or kinetic threats, these threats are real. Space insurance excludes these threats just as part of the contract wording. But the insurance market really would do well to consider how to create tools that address these risks, because they're not going away. Collision risk is another issue that we're facing. It's getting crowded in certain orbits, and it's very important to make sure that we're able to act safely and responsibly in space. And from that, there is a role for regulation. I know the R word is bad in some circles, but I think there's a role for regulation in the space industry, just to make sure that people act responsibly and safely in space. When you're dealing with very critical systems or very simple, whether it's academic satellites or what have you, doesn't matter the scale of the program, it's very important that everyone acts responsibly. And the final thing I'll say is that space business always takes a lot longer than people think. People expect to have, positive returns in no time, right? Things don't happen that fast. They really don't. It takes a long time for the business to become real, to raise the money, to develop the products, to launch them, to operate them. These things take a long time. And so we have to have patience. The market has to have patience. The financial, the investors have to have patience. But patience isn't something that people are used to doling out when there are returns to be made in maybe more terrestrial applications or what have you.
Thank you, Chris. I think back to about 2010 when Falcon 9 first launched, and it felt like everything was about to change, although not everybody knew that. I feel like with Starship and this new administration, everything's about to change again. So I want to do a quick lightning round here. What risks do you see? What opportunities do you see? And what are your personal superpowers in helping us all navigate through the next 4 years and beyond of the evolution of commercial space? Can we go back to Michael to start?
So take it from the top again with my
risks, opportunities, and your superpowers.
Okay. I'll start with my superpowers because that's the shortest of these. Superpower is basically just being able to connect people throughout the space industry, not just in a networking capacity, but also in a communicative capacity, helping people understand what's happening. That's a big reason why I even promote my newsletter that I write each week, because the idea is that you can spend 5 minutes reading my one email and know everything that you needed to know about the industry from a business and investment perspective. That's the goal. If it fails to achieve that goal, please let me know. The only way I improve it and achieve that goal is if I get feedback. So
you podcast, you blog. How do we best connect with you?
So the newsletter goes out straight to your inboxes. If you just Google CNBC Space Newsletter, you're going to find it. You can also follow it on LinkedIn as well if you caveat into the social media realm more. I will say that the other superpower is being able to communicate what is a very complex and often misunderstood industry to the general public, because a lot of my time spent is communicating with folks here in New York and elsewhere who space is like 1% of their brain capacity on any given year. Very occasionally they'll have more focus on it, or a higher mandate that focuses or overlaps with space. Most people don't really. So that's who I'm writing for and trying to help along the way. So that's a big thing that I've really tried to hone, is taking what are a lot of very, very, very smart people who can speak to incredible levels of detail, but then making it make sense to everyone else so they properly understand things like risks and understand where they're putting their money. Going to the risks themselves, I think one big risk that I see personally is NASA continuing to sort of stumble its way forward. I don't mean to say that in a way that maybe belittles the agency. They do incredible things. I think, for example, the robotic Mars missions are just truly unbelievable feats of human engineering. That said, the agency needs to decide whether we're going to be the core of, the future of human spaceflight, with either LEO, moon missions, Mars missions, SLS, Orion, Lunar Gateway, or are we push new boundaries and frontiers with CLIPS missions to the moon delivering cargo, or the DART missions. One of my favorite examples, we just hucked a fridge into an asteroid, which is one of the coolest things I've ever seen NASA do with like a $200 million budget. It was incredible. And we just wanted to see, does it redirect it? What happens here? Anyway, just to come back to the main point, I think one of the big risks is NASA continuing to stumble around where, we're spending so much money, billions and billions of dollars on SLS and Orion, but it's really far behind, and we don't know if it's going to be able to achieve this stuff. And by the way, we're spending more on a launch tower than it costs to build the Burj Khalifa. So there's a lot of questions there that need to be answered and need to be answered incredibly frankly about the direction of NASA moving forward. They do so much good work that shouldn't be lost along the way, but it feels like there's a clear mandate, and we are going is not a clear mandate. It's just this ambiguous phrase of, you're going somewhere ambling along. Opportunities. I think there's some huge opportunities going into 2025. First and foremost, I think is opportunity in the markets themselves. I think we're going to see a proper major space IPO in 2025. I'm not saying that from a perspective of like, the SPAC, deals weren't major. I'm saying like a proper direct, by the direct listing, traditional IPO, where someone who comes to the market with not millions of dollars of revenue, but billions in revenue, and comes in and the market starts to take it seriously. I think that's going to open the doors in so many different ways for the rest of the industry. But I think we actually finally see that in 2025 after now years of waiting for a proper IPO. So that's where I leave it.
It's so nice to watch him grow up and leave home, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It feels like it's been more than 18 years though.
Yeah. Liz, risks, opportunities, superpowers.
All right. So,
Answer any or all.
I'm going to start with opportunities because I do think this is a unique time for opportunities in commercial space. And I think that and it's not really just happening in the US. I think people are really looking for and are really starting to see the types of profits and profitability coming out of new space. Like I said, old space is often now porting new space. There's a lot of, again, opportunities for the government of various state, local, international levels to get involved in this. So I think those opportunities are endless. I think, sort of tied to that with my superpowers is sort of looking at regulatory regimes, making sure that you've got the appropriate brakes on it, and making sure that people's expectations are managed and that the legal framework that we still need to protect people's rights in a commercial business as opposed to a governmental contracts business are there.
We call that adult supervision.
Right. So, and it's hard because a lot of times when you're dealing with old space who's now courting new space, they're used to working within a certain framework. However, I would say that the biggest risk to the industry is still a defense risk. I think it's cyber, and cybersecurity is incredibly important. And we cannot underestimate, the ability of jamming technologies, of cyber interruption technologies to really take down the space economy. So what I'm hoping that we will start to see is as space moves from being exploration, transportation into a real economy, which, I think at some point people will start to consider the role of the Commerce Department in regulating the space economy. But as we start to see that move, we can't forget the fact that, if our enemies or if, jamming technologies were to be used and satellites were to go dark, the tremendous effect that would have. So I still think that that's still the biggest risk that we have. And to that extent, we still need, Space Force and defense and cybersecurity and everybody really focused on it until the world becomes a more peaceful place than it is right now.
All right. Thank you, Liz. Alex, risks, opportunities, and superpowers.
Yes. I think there's plenty of opportunities. I hope that does not translate into FOMO, a fear of missing out. And the second you put dot space, everybody's running after it and throwing money. That's my big fear. And not. Let's talk about what NASA did. I mean, NASA, what they did, there was no return of investment that was expected. They put a man on the moon, and they had these big feats. That what the goals are now have changed, right? And this is stuff that needs to be deployed much quicker. So I do think that there needs to be an understanding between that private and public partnership and what those tasks are. So I think when people, the opportunity slash the risk is when you look at this and it's dot space, you need to look at what the task is and what they're trying to accomplish and what that timeline is. I think everybody needs to take a breath and look at it and really see if the private world can handle it better than the public world. I guess superpower is, I've seen this before. So we have a bit of rational thoughts when we look at it. We've been able to raise money. We're pretty well networked. My partner is on the recently appointed Texas Space Commissioner. So we know anything going on in Texas. You want to do business in Texas in the space industry, whether it's launch, propulsion, what have you. And from that, it sort of spreads to DC. So we kind of know where the players are. So if anybody needs help, they're here. And
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks. I would say my superpower is my ability and willingness to share my vast experience to help companies, the industry, governments, whatever, to navigate the landscape of risk in space, it is a difficult landscape to navigate. And I am a big enthusiast, a big space enthusiast, and I love helping people and companies and governments to make sure that they understand the risks they're taking and how to deal with them. So I'd say that's my superpower. In terms of risks, I listed them earlier, basically, a fragile space insurance market, new threats like adversarial, technical, environmental, and the need for patience and realism in the investor world and in the operator world also. Opportunities, obviously, there's incredible enthusiasm out there for new applications and new technologies. Companies starting up all the time with really interesting ideas. Some very, very forward-looking, some very basic and simple, but that's good. That's what we need. So that's really one of the opportunities. Another one is the opportunity for a diversification of suppliers for all aspects of space. Again, some of these new companies, we want to make sure that there is diversity. It was brought up earlier to make sure that for example, from a national security standpoint, that we are able to accomplish our mission. Same on the civil side, same on the commercial side. We need to make sure that we have a diverse selection of providers for whether it's launch or satellites or operations, what have you. So I think those are my points.
Thank you. Tom?
We'll try to wrap them all up into one, which is our technology is enabling the next generation of networks, right? And we spent decades building out the terrestrial networks, right? Whether they're undersea cable or it's over the air, wireless, it's fiber, whatever it is. That's moving into orbit, right? That's what essentially is happening. The space industry as a whole, I go to it, there's lots of segments in it, right? There's launch, there's other areas, but for what we're doing, it's post-launch, right? We get up there, we're a critical system on a satellite to enable those next generation technologies. So for our standpoint, the risk is really productization, right? It's continuing to innovate on that product because not everybody's going to want to have, just like nobody wants DSL anymore, right? Everybody wants a faster internet connection in their house and you want it ubiquitous. You don't want to even think about it, right? I mean, I used to work for a broadband company and the only reason people really change broadband is they move or your service is really bad and you hate your carrier, right? And so you have to move. And so I think that's really the biggest risk is not being able to keep up, right, with the innovation and technology advancements that we need to. It's the reason why half of our folks are engineers in our firm. The opportunity is huge. I joined the company 2.5 years ago when founders laid out their vision of where things were going to go. And essentially it was what I just said, the terrestrial network sort of gets mirrored and then meshed together, right? You don't even know where your signal is going eventually, right? It's going over a terrestrial network, then it's going into space, it's bouncing between the two. That's in there. And our superpower really is having a technology that can enable that. We have a few customers and prospective customers we know really well. We've got folks that have been in the space industry a long time, like many of you have. And they've said, we had this vision previously in another company decades ago for having this interconnected network, in space. The technology wasn't available. Right, we were thinking too far ahead of what the physical technology, the hardware, and the software would actually deliver. And that's why I think we're probably a little bit, as alluded to earlier, we're sort of post-pets.com, I'll date myself as well. I covered stocks in the late 90s, right? We all know what that was like, early 2000s. And then we went through a couple of years of tough times, right? And it does feel like we're probably, somewhere in that coming into that, out of that valley, right, that was there. Now you're gonna have, a lot more business models that do have good returns. They're gonna have good customers, good solid customers. And what's gonna underpin all that, it's gonna be the hardware and software that can really deliver those services, right, for a lot of those customers.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Just to round things out, I'm going to go back to our first panel, turn the mic over to Hamlet and John. Same question. Risks, opportunities, and superpowers.
I actually put a lot of themes here. I think in terms of opportunities and risks, I think are about the same. I think there's a massive amounts of opportunities to deploy capital to help build companies, help commercialize technologies that go into space and build real companies. There's a lot of capital moving into this space that's very eager to take advantage of this. As a result, I think there is going to be a high failure rate. So this goes back to what I said earlier with our conversation with John. Having the right partners, having the right access points to collaborate and understand where those opportunities are, to validate those opportunities is going to be critical. That's where the real money is going to be made. There is a ton of money to be made in this sector, in this space. If you're smart, patient, and very methodical in terms of where you place your bets. The whole VC world of making 20 bets and hoping 3 or 4 pay off, that's going to fail spectacularly in this space. Plus, you're talking about the hardware along with your software. So being very methodical in terms of assessing risk and understanding where to deploy capital is going to be 1,000% critical. If you do that in very disciplined fashion, you can make wild amount of money in this space in years to come. Superpower, I think it's that. It's our ability to understand where those opportunities are. If you're going to go and navigate the North Sea and try to navigate through a bunch of icebergs and look at the icebergs as what they are, you're going to get crushed. You're going to sink. Our superpower, my superpower, is being able to see below the waterline, assess, understand what the landscape really looks like, where most people don't see, and then help opportunities and capital deploy into where we think the risk has been bought down and adjusted based on marrying technology and opportunities with actual pain points within the industry and helping capital land there.
And your firm is called what?
Iron Gate Capital Advisors, we're a VC fund.
Thank you, Hamlet.
Thanks, John.
John, bring us home. Risks, opportunities, superpowers.
I think the opportunity is that we have unified government. We have a president that learned a lot from his first experience. It's kind of like coming to New York 10 times and thinking you can navigate the city. It's a large labyrinth, this government. I think that also the national security interests make it a priority. China's front and center of all of this, and there's some really smart people that are going to be part of this administration that care a lot about the national security of our country. My superpower is that I'm a highly credible, highly ethical person, and I have been for many years, and people know that. And I'm very good at executive communication. When I call someone, there's a purpose for it, and I think that's why they call me back.
Thank you. Listening to this great conversation, I think about us. This is going to sound a little corny. I feel like we're all godparents of this new space industry, right? We're all trying to help it grow and foster it. None of us alone can do it, but it takes a team effort. So again, I really want to thank Clyde for sponsoring this space today, and they're also generously offering lunch to us to get together and socialize. And then we're going to continue with some more conversation. But we are the owners of commercial space. Every one of us here has superpowers. We play a role. The purpose of the roundtable is to come together and collaborate, to think big thoughts, to think pragmatically, to look at the great opportunities, to look at the failures, what do we learn from them, and to plan our path forward. Again, when we started this activity, it was all about how do we go from little VC investment to serious institutional investment. And that takes a lot of support. So I thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you for all of our guests who come from far and near. And please join us for lunch.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we are going to break for lunch. I want to do a quick run through of a few announcements before we do some really important stuff. I mentioned that I would come back to this awards dinner. Hey, 2 Mondays from now, or we're going to have a dinner. We're going to honor 3 honorees who have told the very best story of how satellite technologies, I should say space and satellite technologies, make a difference in the world. We're having this conversation about the acceleration of commercial space, but I want everybody to know that every single year without fail for the past several years, we are able to find 3 amazing stories. It's an inspiration. Those stories actually already exist on our website. I encourage you to check them out. And if you can't come to London, the folks in England do a good job of throwing Christmas parties. So you should go. Monday, December 16th, SSPI WISE, that is Women in Space Engagement, is celebrating its 4th anniversary. There will be a virtual party. You're going to find out what we're doing, what we're hoping to be doing, and also get to network. Listen, this is a networking event. It is not just for women, so please come. It's just an hour of hanging out, getting to know some folks. And honestly, for women to advance in the industry, they need to get to know folks like the folks in this room. So please come. December 2025, mojo or no-go in commercial space. That is our topic for next month's roundtable. That will happen on the 18th of December. It will be virtual again via Zoom. So we look forward to everybody participating. It'll be the last roundtable of the year. And we're going to kind of pick up on some of the themes that we're discussing right now. And so I do hope everyone comes. Hey, okay, SSPI Space Business Qualified. This is, okay, Liz said that when she started in the industry, she was going around trying to learn stuff. And, we all had that experience. Those of us who entered the industry through non-traditional means. I entered as a customer service person. That's how I got here. Okay, knew nothing about the industry, but, you learn by being around people. Space Business Qualified aims to give us a really broad outlook of what is this industry that we're a part of so that you can be more effective being a part of it. So it is an online program. It is extraordinarily cost-effective, 6-week online training. If you're interested, please contact me and I'm happy to connect you. And yes, we will be having our Hall of Fame celebration March 11, 2025. That happens in the satellite show each year. I'm not going to dwell on this because I know everybody's waiting patiently for lunch, so I'll move in. Here's the big news. Starting in 2025, the Roundtable will not be a monthly, but rather it will be a quarterly event. This is new, but it is so that we can have really engaging opportunities like this without killing me. So we will have it. It will be 3rd Wednesdays in February, May, August, and November. We will have the opportunity to make opportunities for sponsors to have these either be virtual or hybrid, as is today. And I look forward to working with anyone who wants to host a roundtable. So with that, I want to once again thank our sponsors. Our sponsors are Clyde and Company. Thank you, Liz. Mynaric. Thank you, Tom. Satshore, Luxembourg Trade and Invest, and Druva. Our next segment will pick up after lunch. It will not be on Zoom. We are turning off the Zoom at the end of this call. We're all going to go off for lunch. And then we're going to have Chatham House rules. I actually looked it up. That is the actual Chatham House right there. I didn't know that there was a real thing, but it is. It's in London. Chatham House rules, we're going to have a real conversation kind of off the record so that we can talk honestly. I've got big questions. I'm sure you do too. So let's have a conversation. Look forward to seeing you. And also let's have lunch. Thank you all. Thank you all online.
From Buffalo's Mills to Brooklyn's crowded lanes, there's a whispered wish running through